I hate to one up you, but I'm looking forward to many of the same things you are, including the Daytona 500. But my client Campbell's has a sponsorship of the number 19 car with Chase Briscoe. And so congratulations to Chase Briscoe and the entire Joe Gibbs Racing organization for winning the pole and starting on the inside in row one of the
That was
500 on Sunday.
Good timing, my friend. Yes, you did. That's you're not you're not one-upping me, but that's a great call. And congratulations to Chase Briscoe and to JGR and to Campbell's Hoops for that matter, and to you.
Yep.
That's awesome. But that's great. Gosh, this may have to be our cold open. I love it. Welcome to the post-Super Bowl, pre-Daytona 500, pre-NBA All-Star episode of Wait, What? Sportsbiz Chat with DP and McGee, the podcast that takes a somewhat irreverent, often cynical, and on occasion a serious look at the business of sports. I'm your co-host, David Parro.
I'm Tim McGee.
As always, Tim, tons of stuff to be talking about today, so I'll start with asking you what's on your mind.
Well, I think we have to talk about the recently completed Super Bowl LIX, or 59 for those people who aren't as cool as we are, referring to as Super Bowl LIX. But I cannot remember a game where one team dominated so fully from start to finish in all three aspects of the game. You can go back a few years ago and Atlanta up big on New England at halftime, but then New England came back with a comeback for the ages. But this was all Eagles all the way.
Yeah, and the final score certainly didn't even indicate the level of dominance.
Yeah, there was some talk about whether or not they'd be shut out because the Chiefs didn't even sniff the end zone until the end of the third quarter.
Right.
So, yeah, and so I know we'll talk a lot about the ratings. So I was somewhat surprised, given the blowout nature of the game, that it was as highly viewed as it was.
Well, there was a few other thoughts and concerns about would the viewership be stunted at all, given fatigue with the Kansas City Chiefs. Some of the other stuff you started seeing around social media about wanting to boycott it. I won't go into what that might have been all about. So we had both predicted an over from the record of last year, and it exceeded that. So again, like you said, we'll get to that in a second, but agreed, the game was a blowout. At one point, that Atlanta New England game popped into all of our minds, right? Because you're dealing with the Kansas City Chiefs, the team that everybody talks about, always finding a way to win a game, even in the most unlikely circumstances. And they're down big, and it keeps getting bigger. But then in the back of your mind, it's the Chiefs, and we've had this Falcons game, or this Falcons-Patriots Super Bowl with the Patriots coming back to win it. But it never materialized at all. And I think that's what made it somewhat fascinating and surprising, because you pointed out it's hard to recall a team or a game that was dominated by one team in all three phases of the game as much as this one was. But that was completely the opposite of what people would expect. If there was going to be anyone dominating, I think people expected to be the Chiefs. But just look at the run that the Eagles had. I mean, they were dominating teams, and they did it again in the Super Bowl. And all of the weaknesses that Kansas City Chiefs were exposed on during the season, but still found a way to win, were completely exploited by the Eagles. And, the vaunted, Steve Spagnuolo, the defense just was in no offense. I mean, the guy's a brilliant defensive coordinator, gets more attention than any one I've ever seen besides, Taylor Swift at games. But they were so ready for everything. And my gosh, was Jalen Hurts the most deserving MVP you've ever seen. Just the way he conducted himself through the playoffs after the game, just complete leadership, exude leadership.
Yes, great leader on the field, from what I understand, a great leader off the field as well. And from what I read, the Eagles did not blitz once, and boy, they were in Patrick Mahomes' back pocket the whole night.
It's amazing. Four-man rush all night, and they were crushing Mahomes. Now, by the way, I just said that the Eagles had something for everything Spagnuolo tried to throw at him. I believe that to be true. At the same time, that Chiefs defense did the main thing they set out to do, and that was to stop Saquon Barkley. And they did that for the most part. But that just opened up everything else that Hurts needed to do. Plus, they have some pretty darn good receivers. And that offensive line of the Eagles is just insane.
Of course, they have a former New York Jet who refused to move from tackle to guard with the Jets. He was supposed to be this Mekhi Becton and was supposed to be out of shape. And he was a beast as part of that line. And they did not lose anything when Jason Kelce retired. And he was one of the best centers in the history of the game. So kudos to the Eagles.
Yeah, AFC Championship game. The Bills, on I think multiple occasions, try what has become known as the tush push. Philadelphia has tried to rebrand it the brotherly shove, which I think is funny. But it didn't work against the Chiefs. The Bills did not make it work against the Chiefs in the AFC Championship game. So coming into the Super Bowl, lo and behold, they have a chance to do the tush push. And my thinking, I picked the Eagles. I was cheering for the Eagles. I'm putting that on record again. I was wondering if it would work against the Chiefs, and it worked like a charm.
The astrophysicist Neil deGrasse Tyson did an item, I think it was on one of his social media platforms, about the physics of the tush push and how it's virtually impossible to stop.
Yeah, if you have the right athletes doing the job, right?
Right.
So congrats to our friend Terry Lefton and all the Eagles fans out there. It was great. Now, so let's talk about the viewership number. Let's get into the business side of it. We've had our little fan talk here.
Okay.
So you won. You won our little competition in that you were closer. We both were under. You predicted 125.1 million. I predicted 124.5. As I said, we both picked the over from the last year's record of 123.7, I think it was. And yeah, so the number was 127.7 million viewers. We couldn't get our friend Ben Riling last week to commit to a number, but I'm sure he's happy that the number is what it was as they get to that 100% counting that Nielsen likes to speak about.
When you talk about the Super Bowl, fatigue of any particular team, I don't think counts. I don't think any threat of boycott or any other action matters. I think people are going to tune in. And one thing that did surprise me slightly is that Kendrick Lamar's halftime performance set the record for highest viewership of a halftime show, 133.4 million, beating Michael Jackson's record of 133.3 million. So I think I made a post on Monday on LinkedIn and also on my Facebook page about the people who were complaining about Kendrick Lamar's performance.
Yeah, it was a great post. I was going to bring that up. I saw some other similar ones. I thought you did a great job. The point that Tim was making on his post is that he and all marketers should remind themselves, and he makes a habit of doing it, that we may not be the target market. I saw
absolutely or not.
Right. So I saw a lot of people post worst halftime show ever. That's got to stop, or we're not watching anymore. And my thought was, do you think Roger Goodell cares? He might be happy that you're saying this. He might be happy that you're saying this because, what acts do you want? How many more of the classic rock retreads are out there anyway? I mean, this was a bold, I think, choice, especially Kendrick Lamar, not only because he's embroiled, in the feud with Drake right now, but he has been a hero to many. He's a very socially conscious guy. He has a message in all of his music. He has a message, and he is the first solo hip hop artist to perform. I'm not saying I would rank it in terms of my favorite, but again, I wasn't necessarily the audience, and the NFL has to constantly be looking to appeal, to have people watching that game and that feeling that the NFL is speaking to them, and getting younger audiences and more diverse audiences extremely important. And it matches up with everything they said. If you look at the ad, and I'm going to talk about it because I'm going to mention it, is their somebody ad, the NFL ad. It's very consistent with the Kendrick Lamar halftime show.
A couple things I'd like to add. So one of the things, and I'm not a Kendrick Lamar fan, that's okay. One of the things that I really enjoyed about his show is the symbolism. I thought it was mildly subversive, and like a lot of great art, is mildly subversive. His use of people making a flag, Samuel Jackson, who, in my opinion, does angry better than anybody else in the world, except my mom when I was a kid. He went from Uncle Sam, and this is not me saying this, but very similar to the role he played in Django Unchained, an Uncle Tom type character.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the symbolism there was great. But, a lot of those people who said worst halftime show ever, or I'm not going to watch again, they simply cut and pasted from last year when, you had artists like Alicia Keys and Ludacris and Little John and will.i.am and so HER and so forth. It's interesting, the NFL contracted with Rock Nation a couple of years ago to produce the halftime show. Rock Nation, famously founded by Jay-Z, and I think that's their sensibility, and that's the type of acts they're going to book. But to your point, so we were talking to somebody who would not be controversial, or who would not get the worst show ever treatment. The only person we could come up with was Dolly Parton.
Right.
And I think that's not necessarily because of her music, but because of her philanthropic and charitable work over the last decade or so in particular. I'm sure she's been very charitable over her whole career, but you're going to antagonize some segment of your audience. But those people who are writing worst show ever, they may walk away during halftime, but they're going to watch the Super Bowl.
Right.
So Roger Goodell couldn't give a frog's fat ass about those people. He needs to attract the next generation of fans and viewers. That's the NFL's job.
And honestly, we're talking about it. We're talking about it now. We were talking about it the day after, and we may be talking about it for a while. And Kendrick Lamar is going to have a killer tour that he's about to launch. So.
Yeah, I'm sure his
I might go see him.
Has spiked. But let's keep in mind that this guy has sold, prior to this past weekend, sold an equivalent of 50 million albums over the course of his career. So if you sit there and say, I don't like this guy, I don't know this guy, well, guess what? There's a lot of people who do.
Right.
I might have gone too far when I suggested that people play their yacht rock playlist next year if they don't like the act. But my point was, you're not the target audience. If you're of a certain age, you're not the target audience for this show.
I mean, listen, we talk about branding. In a lot of cases, to be broad in your message, you have to be very specific, right? You have to talk about personas you're trying to reach. You have to somewhat narrowly define your brand to make sure that it's landing somewhere that then could create a ripple effect. So this idea, and in today's fragmented media world, the idea of being able to be all things to all people really doesn't exist anyway. And so if you're going to go in a way to create some splash, I would say, in that regard, the Kendrick Lamar booking and execution was spot on for the league.
Yeah, personally, I'd like to see a radical splinter group of Up With People perform, but that's just me.
Could you sing the song if a gun pointed to you?
Up with people,
right.
You meet them wherever you go. Up with people, they're the best kind of folks, If more people were for people, yeah.
There'd
I
be
can't
a
believe
lot
I
more
just.
people to worry about, and a lot less people to
Oh,
worry. That was I always found that last line weird. By the way, they were
a lot
basically
less
trying to pop. They were basically trying to keep population down. That was their little subtle message. There'd be a
Was
lot
it
less
really?
people. A lot less. My recollection of the last line. There'd be a
A
lot
lot,
less
a lot
people to
of
worry
people who,
about.
and a
Lot
lot
less.
more people who care.
Right.
And
There.
see, I never read it as eugenics or
I kind
or
of did.
forced sterilization
I
like
was
you're
wondering
carrying.
if we are now in China. Excuse me, not
I always read it as there'd be a lot more people who were happy and caring, and you
well.
wouldn't have to worry as much about other people. But that could have been my naivete because
I thought the wording was weird. I think your
it was.
interpretation is right, but yes, that's the last line. Is there'd be a lot less people to worry about and a lot more people to care. The point, the message of the song is that we wouldn't have to worry so much because it'd be such a positive vibe. But
Yeah.
it's a lyric that makes you wonder.
I'd like to see sort of an Anchorman style rumble
Oh, that would be
between
good.
Up With People and the is it the new minstrel singers who sang I'd like to give the world a Coke and teach the world to sing
Could
in
be
perfect harmony. Yeah, you could have like an Anchorman type
the
rumble.
the rumble scene. The rumble scene in Anchorman was so good. It was one of the funniest things, and it comes at an interesting time in the movie. Of course, I love that about Will Ferrell movies. It's like anytime you're kind of hitting a wall, something ridiculous happens that just brings you back into the hilarity. And the rumble scene was that.
Can we talk about Will Ferrell getting dressed up late last year for a Kings game as Buddy Elf with
Yeah,
a
smoking. It's amazing. Can we talk about ads?
If we have to, I'm not impressed.
You weren't impressed. All right.
No, I was
You had
not.
to. The general body of work across the Super Bowl is you're giving a major thumbs down to.
I am hard pressed to remember ads that I thought were truly memorable or great. Um, from what I understand, the T-Mobile ad talking about their relationship with Starlink, which is owned by Elon Musk, was the most engaging ad within the entire game.
I looked at several of the meters, I'll say, and I didn't necessarily agree with any of them, but they seemed to be all over the map. But I'll give you a couple that I thought were good.
Okay.
And I tend to judge these on did something connect with what they were trying to do rather than just kind of grab your attention with celebrity and slapstick humor. I'm not saying that celebrity is necessarily bad.
No.
The one that stood out, and I think Google has done some great ads over the years. The Google Gemini, which is their AI product built into pretty much everything they do, called Dream Job, I thought was good. I thought was great. It was very emotional. It had me emotional, and the concept of the ad was someone trying to build out his resume and prepare for interviews and all that using the AI tool, Gemini. But the job that he was basing it all on was the fact that he had been a stay-at-home dad. And he was trying to capture all of the things that made him good for the position that he was seeking. I thought it was tremendous execution, tugged at the heartstrings, all those stuff. Didn't have a celebrity in it. It was a father and his family. I thought it was well done and hit a point and humanized AI, which is, I think, one of the things that we all worry a little about. Now, maybe it humanized it a little too much, but I thought it was good. I thought the Nike ad called "So Win" I thought was good. You didn't like it?
No, I loved it. That was
Yeah.
the one notable exception.
I thought this idea of women in sports, and we talk about it a lot on this show. It really has been a revolutionary time for women's sports. Being told that something's not going to go right, or you're not going to be able to succeed, or you're not going to be able to play this, or you're not going to have a future doing it, and ultimately saying you can't win, with the idea being is so win. Everything came at you was like, here's the counter, just go do it, which is kind of consistent with Nike. Anyway, I thought that was a tremendous spot.
I also love the Dove spot. with the little girl running. Again, tapping into the zeitgeist of women's sports right now.
The criticism, I like that ad as well. The criticism of it was that it ended with a bit of a Debbie Downer, because it quoted the stat about women being leaving playing, or girls leaving playing sports, mostly because of their own feeling of self-worth or their image issues that oftentimes are ascribed to young athletes, particularly girls, which just sucks. So yeah, I like the concept of the ad as well.
It was interesting because I did read an article where the author did say that he thought we were far enough away from the pandemic that you could at least try to have an ad that wasn't completely upbeat.
Right.
Regardless, I did think using Post Malone and 𝘚𝘱𝘰𝘵𝘴 in the Bud Light Big Man on the Cul-de-sac. I thought that was clever.
Yeah. I thought that played pretty nice, given that a lot of Bud Light targeted drinkers are people that live in neighborhoods like that, you know, the garage party or the street party or something that, you know, that they've lived through. So I thought that one was pretty fun as well. An interesting collaboration. Peyton Manning appeared in that ad as well.
Can I make a prediction now?
Yeah.
Okay. Completely. Well, it is apropos of what we've just been talking about. Bud Light's going to take over for Xfinity as the naming rights partner for the second tier NASCAR series. That's my prediction.
Really? So
it won't go back. It won't go back to Busch. It will go to Bud Light, because they are still trying to regain whatever they lost, you know, a couple of years ago.
Will Busch maintain the Clash sponsorship, which they still have, or will everything switch back over?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Because they're coming out of separate budgets, right? The Bud Light brand and the Busch brand.
Well, I mean, but AB has to decide, do they want to amplify to the extreme through the sport with a single brand? Not that they have to. That'll be an interesting choice that they'll have to make. By the way, I can't believe I forgot to talk about the Busch Clash, which happened to take place at Bowman Gray Stadium in Winston-Salem, which is very aligned with Wake Forest University. They moved the Clash back there from LA back to its roots in the Winston area. So anyway, you know, I guess we'll have to talk NASCAR soon enough, because the 500 is this weekend. But I have, you mentioned celebrities in the Bud Light ad. I did have one that I thought was the best use of celebrity. And I'm not saying this because we got slammed by Ken Christian last year for not liking the David Beckham ad.
I liked Dave. I liked that spot as well.
I liked it. First of all, Matt freaking Damon is so good in ads. He's not, I mean, even last year's Duncan ad that he appeared in with his buddy Ben Affleck, he was, to me, he was this, and Jennifer Lopez before they got split up again. He was the star of that one. And he pulls off this stuff very well in ads. So I thought that was a nice use of celebrity, and the line about the closing line of, you know, you drink Stella, and he just says, I have taste, David, I thought was great. So good use of Beckham. And it's the idea of Beckham having a twin unknown brother, and his name is Other Dave, which...
Are you famous? Are you Matt Damon famous?
Ben Affleck famous. Ben Affleck. That's unfortunate.
I did not particularly care for the Duncan ad with Ben and Casey Affleck and Bill Belichick. Not a fan.
And Jeremy Strong, who, I mean, I think they're just, this is, to me, and a lot of people liked it. It scored fairly well for engagement, and they throw everything at it, right? Just heavy celebrity, heavy on the crazy, and they replicated the concept from last year. So they doubled down on what they did last year. So a lot of people give it credit for that. But to me, it's just too much. I mean, Jeremy Strong, who, if you don't know, is famous for his role in Succession, pardon me. Shows about very wealthy people. The part of him getting in character inside the coffee is okay. They're you know, that tied to what they were trying to talk about, the excellence of the coffee. And the end comparison with the dissing on Starbucks was a bit funny. But yeah, it's just too much for me.
Uh, and I will say this, if you want to see the best Dunkin' Donuts commercial ever starring in Affleck,
No,
the Casey Affleck's parody ad in Saturday Night Live.
it's so good, so good.
Yeah, I mean, even the other actors who like uh who play you know, the woman at the counter and the postal carrier. Yeah, it's
Yeah, Mikey Day features as his friend, and Bobby Moynihan's in that one.
yeah.
It's yeah, it's Casey Affleck. I remember. I mean, if anyone has seen Manchester by the Sea,
Yeah. Oh,
one of the
and
it's
Gone Girl.
arguably the saddest movie you'll ever see. By the way, I mean Casey Affleck is a brilliant actor, and when he hosted Saturday Night Live and they did that skit, I couldn't stop watching it. I thought it was so good, and he was so excellent in it. The one thing I don't get though is this constant, like these guys, like when you see Ben Affleck interviewed, he doesn't. They all go hard at the Boston accent every time they do a commercial. Krasinski does it. Affleck does it. Rachel Dratch does it. They go to the Southie accent.
Well, that Hyundai ad was a play on it. And
I know.
Yeah, come on. Don't be
I
a
know
smarty.
it does.
Don't be a smarty pants.
I get it. Listen, I even like the Sam Adams, your cousin from Boston. I think that's cute. I get it.
I know people like that guy.
Yeah. Okay, I do. One other celeb ad that I thought was good. A lot of people didn't like this, but I believe that Chrysler Jeep have done good ads over the years, including celebrity Eminem, Clint Eastwood, and they used Harrison Ford this year in a Jeep ad, and it was called Manual. It was like there's not a manual for life, and the beauty of it was this concept of choice, American patriotism. But they really focused on choice, which I thought was interesting. And he drives an EV, or at least a hybrid. I'm not sure. That was the one they were featured, but it was like, we have vehicles for everyone. I thought that was a nice execution. I'm a big Harrison Ford fan, so I was interested in it from the beginning.
Bill Murray gets a pass for his ad just because he's Bill Murray.
Yeah, absolutely. I did have a worst one too.
Which one did you think was worse?
I thought the Meta Ray-Ban, the Meta one, the Meta glasses to me was the worst, with Chris Hemsworth and Chris Pratt and Kris Jenner. Yeah. And it had the lockup logo with Meta and Ray-Ban, and I'm like, I didn't even know at first what we were talking about. I mean, I guess it somewhat explains itself, but not a good execution of a physical product, a physical AI product. I didn't think. Just didn't sell enough on the benefit. Tried to be cute. Didn't do anything for me.
I would agree with you. My least favorite ad was the one for Little Caesars with Eugene Levy and his eyebrows fly away. I just thought that was weird and not funny.
And it hurts because Eugene Levy is wonderful in everything.
Yeah,
generally speaking.
Yeah, that was my least favorite. One word, and I think you're going to agree. 𝘠𝘱𝘭𝘠𝘭. That is the Super Bowl ad by which all other ads.
That's a standard. That's a standard.
Are measured.
I did give credit to Rocket Mortgage on the Take Me Home concept, singing country road song as a background for this concept of home, whatever that is to you, and then coming back into the stadium with the hit where they recognized it and everybody was supposed to be singing along. Reasonable attempt at an execution. I'm not sure it landed just right, but I give him an A for effort.
The only reason I don't like that is because when I hear Take Me Home Country Road right now, all I can think of is the Kingsman movie with Colin Firth and Taggart Egerton, and in the I think it's the second one, that song plays a part in the plot of the movie. And what's his name? Mark Strong, not to be confused with Jeremy Strong. Mark Strong sings it as he's standing on a landmine, and you can imagine what happens to his character.
we all bring our experiences and our biases into everything we judge, Tim. It's totally understandable. You never have to explain yourself on this show, of course. Can I chat a little more about football now? I did want to talk about the passing of Virginia McCaskey recently. Virginia McCaskey, of course, is the longtime principal owner of the Chicago Bears. That franchise has been in the family of the Halas McCaskeys since the founding of the team by George Halas, one of the true founders of the NFL. She died at 102 years old. She was not the executive in charge. She has left that to her sons. Currently, George McCaskey's been running the team for a while, but she is a presence. She's at every game. The daughter of George Halas, she took control in 1983. And a lot of things are going on with the Bears. They had a very down year, of course. They're embroiled in this situation as to where they may be playing in the future. Are they going to move from the lakefront location of their current stadium in the city of Chicago to Arlington Heights or to Naperville, suburban areas that aren't just across the border? They're a little bit of a hike, and that would change very much the dynamic of what that team has been all about. They have a relatively new president in Kevin Warren, who ditched the Big Ten to come run this team, and they've continued to struggle. And on top of that, this season, the chants for sell the team have been very loud, consistent with like what we're hearing in Dallas right now over the Luka Doncic trade. So it's going to be an interesting time. And I'm going to be watching this as to whether the family decides to start looking into different types of investment. Will they consider selling the team now that Virginia, who held that, she loved this team so much. She loved the city so much. And she believed, as we've talked on the show, that team ownership, particularly NFL team ownership, is an absolute trust and a bond. And while the team has not performed, and you can point to decisions that they have made, I don't believe for a second that she didn't love the city, that she didn't love the team, that she didn't love the players, and that she wanted to deliver a winner. So the Chicago Bears, and the games I've seen, and being at the stadium when they won the NFC and accepted the George Halas Trophy at Soldier Field after beating the Saints to go to the Super Bowl in 2016. I mean, those are such big memories of her. So my hat's off to her. If anyone cares to read Dan Pompei's article on Virginia McCaskey in The Athletic, I think it's one. And by the way, Dan Pompei is an awesome football writer, for those of you that haven't read him before. So I'll say thank you to her and her father and her family, whatever happens. And I do hope that the team turns around and that they get settled. But yeah, she's it's a bit of an end of an era with her passing.
Yes, we'll watch the developments, but I can't see how they don't take some sort of outside investment for a couple of reasons. Assume they did estate planning, but given the value of the franchise, there's going to be a big tax bill to pay, I would imagine. And number two, it's too lucrative to not at least consider taking some sort of outside investment. Because I would imagine, given the size of the market, notwithstanding the lack of success over the last few years, the Bears have got to be one of the most desirable NFL teams. Not that any team is not desirable, but given the market, given the storied history, it's got to be extremely attractive investment opportunity for people.
Certainly agree. Oh, it would be massive. Now, they don't own their stadium right now, so that's a piece of it, and the deal's never been as good as I think a team would normally like. And they have some challenges with that particular site, which is why they would have to move off it if they are going to rebuild. What else do you have?
I want to do a spotlight on sponsorships just real quickly.
How do we feel about these sponsorship deals?
Read some really interesting statistics over the last week or so. U.S. sponsorships have generated $11 billion in media value in 2024 for their partners, led by what I'm assuming you didn't see this article, but if you did, you can pretend you didn't and then act like you're really smart. What league do you think got the most media value for its partners?
NFL because of Nike.
No, it was actually Major League Baseball because of the number of games. So
Okay.
according to ReloMetrics, who wrote the article or provided the data for the article, $4.8 billion in media value for Major League Baseball sponsors, led by Star Insurance, the jersey patch partner for the New York Yankees, who got over $34.7 million in value. And
So
my
it
understanding is that's about $25 million a year. So they're getting positive ROI just based on that.
So it measured the national games as well as all of the
Everything,
local
yeah.
broadcasts. Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
so
listen, baseball is a fascinating sport compared to particularly the other of the four majors that we would say, and that's how they're normally referred to: NFL, MLB, NBA, NHL. Here in the States, is that the even more so than basketball, I would say, more so than NBA, is it is a very local consumption thing. So so I think that ends up being vitally important and why it probably pushed him over. That's interesting. Yeah.
Yep. And then just to close the loop on that, NFL team sponsorships were up 6% in 2024 over 2023, with a total revenue of $2.5 billion for the clubs. Not surprisingly, led by Dallas with an estimated $100 million in sponsorship revenue. At least 20 of which is coming from my former employer, AT&T.
Yeah.
And you've got some other big ones there like Ford and Miller and Dr. Pepper, Pepsi, and so forth.
Very interesting. Yeah, it's good to see that. It's interesting to see reports like that, and how gathering that information and then factoring it into the decisions that brands and agencies will take on where to place their sponsorship dollars. I think that's a very good storyline for Major League Baseball. And I think, coming out of the World Series this year or the MLB playoffs overall, we talked about the Strauss helmet deal and the visibility that it garnered during the playoffs. The introduction of the patches to the uniforms on the sleeve, I think, has been an interesting thing and success. We've had some fun with that, particularly with the Mets original patch deal that seemed to go down the entire arm, and they had to fix that. But those patch deals seem to work. Now, I will say this about patch deals in general: there's a glut of them out in the marketplace right now. It seems like everybody's selling, and they come up too quickly on NBA, and NHL seems to generally sells helmets, and I think they're moving to jersey patches, and they break it up home and away and things like that. So there's a lot of inventory out there, it seems to me. So from a value standpoint, I think they're pretty good buys, or can be pretty good buys, and if they're delivering visibility. But this is largely based on the ratings or the viewership numbers of the national games, and of course the local games. Interesting. Yep. I did want to add one other point coming out of this quick sponsor, this surprise spotlight on sponsorship you threw at me, which is great, by the way.
You handled it like a pro.
Hey, that's what we do. I just literally read before we came in that the USL, United Soccer League, has confirmed and announced just today, as we're recording this, plans to launch a new Division I men's professional league in 2027, rivaling Major League Soccer. Sanctioned by US Soccer, same sanctioning body that has to sanction any league or any play in the United States. And the CEO of USL says it's a defining moment for the future of soccer in the United States. He goes on to say a few other things about the growth and believing that is meant to, or the mission really is to help grow the game here in the United States. And you can argue that could be true. I question big time whether there's a market for it, and obviously what it means for the player pool. But I really wanted to get your thoughts on that. You're more of an expert on the game than I am.
Well, I think a couple of things come to mind, and I did not read the article. I can only go by what you've conveyed both here and then before we came on the air. Being sanctioned as being sanctioned as a first division league doesn't have anything to do with the quality of the players. It has to do with the facilities and things like that. So So I'm not, so it doesn't surprise me that they could be granted first division status. What I do question is the size of the market as it relates to both fan base and talent. Can this country support two first division leagues? And I think the answer, to me, my immediate answer is no, it cannot. So to what end is the USL? They're claiming that they wanted, this is to compete with Major League Soccer. Maybe they believe that the growth in fan avidity and interest will increase so much as a result of the World Cup coming here in 2026 that the market can support two leagues. But you can go back 150 years and very few sports can support two leagues, right? The NFL and the AFL merged, the WHA and the NHL merged, the ABA and the NBA merged. The size of the market can't support two leagues, two competing leagues, from a financial perspective, from a fan perspective, from a talent perspective. It's all very difficult. Is this a play to try to get Major League Soccer to continue to consider some sort of strategic arrangement with USL? I don't know. I would have to learn a lot more about it. But I don't think this country can support a second first division league. I don't think there's enough talent willing to play here, given the financial structure of MLS. And you have to believe that USL would have even fewer resources with which to appeal to players.
Yeah,
I'm not going to stay up at night worrying. If I'm Don Garber, I'm not staying up at night worrying about USL taking business from me.
I would tend to agree with most of the things you said. And I do think that the thought is coming out of 2026, because there's always that thought. Let's start this league and that league coming out of something which will be massive in this country and in throughout North America, the 2026 FIFA World Cup. So, but we're at a time when clearly, and we've talked about this a lot, where MLS is going to be in very good position to, I think, grow as they're coming off some great momentum over the last couple of years anyway. And so, yeah, I do worry a little about curtailing the momentum that they have had. And listen, it's not, we're not anti-growth here, right? Like if it's something for us to talk about on the show, then I'm generally going to be for it. I just find it to be interesting. I don't think it's a good time. I don't think it is going to bode well, but that's what we're thinking as we look at it right now. I'll say this: MLS launches on February 22nd, their new season, which we're looking forward to. We're going to have some guests on to talk about that in a bit, and maybe we'll have to ask them their thoughts on this. But I think that's a good time to end. Take a quick break. We'll be back to wrap the show.
So we're back, and this is the part of the show where we look forward, talk a little bit about what we are excited about, looking forward to, expecting to see in the world of sports business. So, David, what are you looking forward to as we go into this Valentine's Day weekend?
Yeah, well, there's a lot of big sports things going on with the NBA All-Star Game out in the Bay Area, and of course the Daytona 500 with the official kickoff of the NASCAR season. And best of luck to some former guests. I'm going to totally, just play that card right now. And Kelly Flato, the EVP of events at the NBA, who just does an amazing job. She was an incredible guest on the show. She is working to put on an amazing event. So best to her. And of course, Carrie Tatlott, EVP of Global Partnerships at the NBA, I'm sure, with some great activations going on there. Also, Steve Loletta, president of 2311 Racing, will have their team's cars on the grid. And Jonathan Gibson, EVP at Penske, Austin Cindric is going to start second. He's a Penske driver. Will start on the front row for the Daytona 500 on Sunday. So good luck to all of our former guests this weekend on these great things. There's another story that I've been thinking about a lot, and obviously intersects with my world heavily that I've been involved in with Formula One over the last few years. We also had our drivers in town, New York City this weekend, new drivers, Ollie Behrman and Esteban Ocon, for a photo shoot, content capture. We had an amazing day in New York City. Neither of these, worldwide athletes have ever been in New York City before, Tim. So that was kind of fun. Got him to eat some good New York pizza, got him to the Empire State Building, and did some, just had a great day. Anyway, the reason I bring that up is because one of my predictions was Netflix continuing to move into the live sports space this year. And there is a lot of chatter about them possibly taking a serious run at the Formula One rights, which will be up for discussion. ESPN let their exclusive period run out. They have said that they're still interested in it, but Netflix, as the owner of the Drive to Survive series, which they've had a lot of success with, a lot of people credit for the resurgence of enthusiasm around the sport, particularly in the US, is considering doing, I think it would be a brilliant play, and they would be able to do a lot together. So that's just a big story that's going to be coming into focus as we approach the start to the F1 season coming up here soon.
I hate to one-up you, but I'm looking forward to many of the same things you are, including the Daytona 500. But my client, Campbell's, has a sponsorship of the number 19 car with Chase Briscoe. And so congratulations to Chase Briscoe and the entire Joe Gibbs Racing organization for winning the pole and starting on the inside in row one of
that
the
was
500.
Good timing, my friend. Yes, you did. That's you're not you're not one-upping me, but that's a great call. And congratulations to Chase Briscoe and to JGR and to Campbell's Hoops for that matter, and to you. Yep. That's awesome. But that's great. Gosh, this may have to be our cold open. I love it.
He'll be running the number 19 Bass Pro Shops car. So looking for big things from Chase this year. And it's especially gratifying because he did crash out during the clash. And so for him to rebound like that the next week and get the pole at Daytona is always a cool thing. So,
I do want to go on record and, show that I put a little more care to our guests on the Wait What Sportsbiz chat. Just throw that out there. Where you focus more on, your work outside, but that's just the difference between us. That's what makes the show tick, right?
I sent a note to Steve Lilletta on Monday, wishing him good luck during Speed Week.
We will find any way to drop names on this show, won't we? Including faux arguments.
Right. And he mentioned Michael.
Listen, we've had this talk before. You have to mention Michael. It was like when we had Rick Singer on, and he just started talking about Tiger in the most casual way,
right?
And that's how Jake is now with MJ.
Too funny. All right, I think that's it, my friend. We want to thank you, our listeners, for commenting, for liking us, for following us, for sharing us. We truly enjoy all the feedback we get, so keep it coming. We'll be back next week, but until then, he's DP. I'm McGee, and we'll talk soon.